on BBC 4, reflecting on the London bombings. We are not afraid.
People started saying prayers, praying to God. Everyone thought we were going to die.
Everyone says, remain calm. As soon as we're ready to evacuate, we'll get everybody up. Sorry, we've got a meeting instantly. Sorry, can we move on?
1 minute is bust, next moment the whole thing had just literally peeled off like a sardine tin. I'm very, very lucky indeed, especially as I saw what happened in the next carriage.
I've had bad wisdom tooth problem for a while, and I hadn't been sleeping very well. So I called into work and said, look, I'm not sure if I'm going to come in today.
Move away from the area. You move away from the area, please.
I was sitting at my desk, and someone posted an image on Moblog UK of being outside Liverpool Street Station. It came in at 8:59, which was only a few minutes after, and said, Big Bang outside Liverpool Street Station, everyone evacuated. So I then said, Big Bang, can you elaborate?
Transport police say that emergency services were called to London's Liverpool Street Station after reports of a loud bang this morning, or according to some reports, some kind of explosion. British Transport Police believe a power surge has affected stations including King's Cross and Aldgate East. Some people
a little while later, I received an image via my girlfriend from my friend Adam Stacey.
That morning, Elliot, my friend, and I were on our way to work, and we managed to squeeze our way onto the tube, which was really packed that day. And then as we were heading through the tunnel, there was a massive bang. Looked around and smoke was just pouring in from the next carriage. People were really, really frightened. They were panicking. They didn't know what was going on. Well, yeah, when I got off the train, I realised, well, why don't I just get pictures to show my mates, because they won't believe this happened on the way to work. So I got Elliot to take out his camera and take a picture of me just standing in front of it while still covering my mouth.
I thought that it was just an incredibly important image because nothing had really been seen so far. It showed what, to an extent, people were experiencing below ground, and I thought, well, we need to publish this. By around 10 AM, we'd had the inkling that this was not isolated, it had happened in various places.
We have had confirmation of an explosion on the bus. You can see the emergency services there.
It's reasonably clear that there have been a series of terrorist attacks.
When we had essential confirmation that it was terrorists, I was angry, I think. That was really what I was feeling. But it inspired the genesis of the idea of not being afraid, because I think that's just so central to an event like this. So I bought the URL we'renotafraid.com, and it was up and running remarkably fast. I mean, within 2 hours. I took a picture of myself just holding a sign up saying "We're not afraid," which started it off, and then my friends started sending their images in.
I was one of the first pictures on the site. My post originally was the 9th one up. And because I asked him, I said, are you only taking pictures from the UK? Or he was pretty much, I don't care if they're from Mars, just send me a picture. Since we in New York have lived this story before, we knew immediately that it had to be some sort of terrorist attack, that it wasn't just an accident. And the only thing I did was the same reaction I had, in 2001, which was I got very angry.
It then got picked up very quickly by the BBC online, and then it sort of vectored out through all the various channels. So the whole process to actually it becoming global was within a matter of hours. I think from the very outset of receiving images to the site, we've been amazed at the range and breadth of material, because you've got some slightly crass stuff. You have people, you know, pointing the finger at terrorists, and you also have very sweet and family-focused images. We were getting also a lot of images in from people who were making incredibly sophisticated use of their cultural icons. So I think that really it's just hit across the breadth of every type of person.
Looking through the pictures, it's interesting that things that people hold dear are very much there. You see children, babies.
I actually think at least a third of the pictures on the website are of pets or children. And I think what's happening here is that people have reached for the first thing that they want to protect.
Our central ideals in what we will and would not post on the site are essentially nothing that's too aggressive, nothing that's overtly militaristic or gung-ho or we're gonna get ya, and nothing religiously iconographic. We've rejected some very upsetting imagery of people with offensive messages against religions as well as peoples. You know, your standard sort of racist viewpoints. But the examples are actually very few in number. You know, really 99% of the images that we get are exactly on message.
What I felt when I first saw this website was people were really fluent about using technology, really fluent about actually getting their ideas across visually, which is a big surprise to me. You need to source the pictures, you need to blend them, you need to get them the right size, match the tones, and on top of that, add the text. Conceptually, it's a long way away from taking your own pictures for your own pleasure. It's about using all the technology, using your visual imagination to communicate and to reach out.
And one of the things that I particularly like is the guy who has put a photograph of himself looking dim saying, "I'm not afraid," and then underneath he said, "I'm just a bit slow." So you get this sense of humour and you get this sense of breadth from the website, and it becomes just another way of people connecting with each other.
It strikes me that the We're Not Afraid website, in a sense, is an example and a way for people who don't live in Britain to send postcards to Britain, even if they don't actually know anybody. And so what's interesting is you will see people from Germany and you'll see Americans or what have you, and in a sense it's a kind of it's an example of solidarity.
The slogan, "We are not afraid," is hugely powerful. For one, we, a collective term, makes you not feel alone. It makes you feel that you're part of something a hell of a lot bigger. And it gets to the core of it. This is about terrorism, it's about instilling fear and saying, "I'm not afraid. You won't divert my beliefs. You won't divert my route to work. You won't divert my life."
By saying that you're not afraid doesn't mean the same thing to everyone. So you can say that you're not afraid when you really are, and it'll help. You can say that you're not afraid because you're angry or you're defiant.
For some people it might mean you better be afraid because you can't get to us. But no matter what, I think that's almost irrelevant. I think what is relevant is that this has hit a chord with so many people.
In its simplicity, it undercuts meaning, and it becomes something which becomes meaningful to everyone in a different way.
The central message of the website is an act of defiance and an act that we are not going to change according to the behaviour of what the terrorists did. I think, in a sense, what I found quite interesting by looking at the people who were doing it was they were talking to the world, but in a sense, I actually believe they were saying it to themselves, and that by saying it out loud to the world, you make yourself believe it. Because I think the truth is actually people are afraid, but you hope that by saying you're not afraid loudly enough, in front of an audience of millions, downloading it for the world to see, somehow that makes it true.
What We're Not Afraid actually says is, well, we are a bit afraid, but we're not going to show it. When you protest like that, it's usually because the thing you're protesting about is, in a sense, true. And of course, it's fairly rational to be, in a way, a bit afraid. Not over afraid, but a bit afraid. So what the website really says is up yours.
This picture looks like it's been quite quickly taken. Could be a self-portrait. But what's really interesting is how full of visual iconography it is. Like the Oyster card saying, I'm going to use this, I'm going to go straight back into you, I don't care about you. And this St. George cross. And of course that whole gesture of defiance.
When the bombs went off, I was here in Springfield Park, Hackney, with Nate. We were on our way to a baby and toddler music group. I was very angry and shocked, although I suppose, like a lot of people, I wasn't entirely surprised, been expecting something to happen for a while. I heard about we'renotafraid.com and then decided, well, maybe I could take a photo and send it up. It would be quite a satisfying thing to do, and just kind of in a small way to show my act of defiance and that you're not going to intimidate me. I really wanted to take a photo of a bus, and particularly the bus that goes past our flat, with it being the exact same type of bus as the number 30 that was blown up, and then put on We're Not Afraid onto the front of the bus.
What happened in London was completely subterranean for the most part. We only had that bus. If they'd blown up the fourth bomb inside the tube station, imagine this, there would have been nearly no press pictures available at all of the incident. It's the blown up bus which has become the symbol of the London bombings.
At least 3 double-decker buses have arrived during the morning, each carrying dozens of walking wounded from King's Cross and other underground stations.
There's an image that was sent in by a guy called Mark, who was on, I think, the Piccadilly train, and he was on the carriage which had the bomb in it. He was one of the few people to walk out of that carriage. He sent in an image with his head with sutures on it. I called him and had a conversation with him. And I'm not an emotional person, really. I mean, and talking to him, I started crying. It basically made the entire project for me, because this was a person who was immediately involved, who had a voice, and was telling the world that he wasn't afraid. This is someone who they personally attacked, and he's not afraid of them.
What I love about my job more than anything else is that it shows me how resilient we are as a species. We will survive this. Of course we'll survive this. Of course, you know, it will be difficult. It's not something that you wake up the next day and you know how to deal with, because it's not something we've dealt with before. But will we learn how to deal with it and cope with it and eventually get through it and put it behind us? I have no doubt.
I mean, a lot of people talked about how London was sort of carrying on as was. I think that was true, but I think people sort of forgot that actually the reason people were carrying on was because they had to. The urgency and the demands of employment and work and the need to sort of just keep going, I think actually sort of helped propel everybody to calm down and sort of stay, you know, pretty much stay as they were.
I've been close to 2 explosions in London. One was the explosions on the 7th at Edgware Road, and then 9 years ago in February when the IRA exploded a bomb just beyond the tree line over there, South Quay, near Canary Wharf. kind of second time around, and I'm still just carrying on, living my life and getting on with it, regardless of the actions of the terrorists. It's important that I'm here for my family, and I carry on as normal. It's not a big flag waving exercise. It's just glad that I can continue with my family, but sadly others can't.
Never give in. Never give in. Never, never, never. In nothing, great or small, large or petty, never give in except to convictions of honor and good sense.
I've been through the Blitz, I've been through worse, I'm not afraid. And, I mean, that's an inspiring image, you know. I mean, our generation and the generations before us have been through so much that it's just an amazing kind of generational bridge.
Almost nobody who's made a comparison to the Blitz spirit was around at the time of the Blitz. You know, and the Blitz wasn't any kind of very straightforward thing. I mean, at the beginning of the Blitz, there was a campaign, for instance, had to be launched to get air raid shelters open, to open up the tube stations, because at first the authorities weren't permitting it. At the early stages of the Blitz, there was a tremendous amount of division and bad feeling, and after a large number of people were killed. The first thing we said about 9/11 was the sheer scale of it, and the drama of it was far greater than what happened in London. In America, in New York, of course, it caused an immediate, incredible sort of panic. We'd never seen an attack of that kind before, and I think people in New York at that stage felt anything was possible. In Madrid, which was a scale 4 times as big as London, there was that massive and very, very moving demonstration. In London, the response was quieter.
I must say, you know, the British people collectively, their collective responses, their collective strength of character has been something to really stand back and be in awe of. They faced one of the most horrific things that any city can face. And they were on the tube the next day, and they were fine, and they were, you know, stoic about it and thoughtful, and you know, unbelievably commendable. I mean, and you would have completely understood if there had been mass hysteria. If there's anywhere a time and a place to go hysterical and start screaming clearly when someone's putting, you know, bombs in the underground, it's the time. No, none of that.
I think that's best seen in the story that Maureen Lipman tells about getting in the car and cruising around trying to find people who she could give lifts back home to, and finding it quite difficult because people, not surprisingly, rather wondered who this batty lady in a car was.
The thing I actually found most powerful was during the Trafalgar Square Memorial. There were images from all over Britain, I think, about, you know, how people felt. And there was one from Nottingham, and there was a whole load of Asian girls standing at some sort of Islamic centre, and they were all wearing headscarves and what have you. And they all had this big banner which said, "Not in our name." And that really sent chills of sort of something down me, because I thought, what was to use a slogan which was the anti-war slogan, to then basically reappropriate that and say, yes, we might not have supported the war, we may not agree with foreign policy, but we don't agree that this was actually okay. I thought that was a really, really powerful symbolic act.
Well, I was familiar with We'reNotAfraid.com through the media exposure it had, and I thought it was a fantastic idea. Not in the Name of Peace.com is a reflection of that. We're both trying to do the same thing. but I really wanted to give it a Muslim flavour, an Islamic flavour, to say that this really has not got anything to do with the traditional teachings of Islam, and try and stem the backlash against the Muslims within the UK and the wider world. I was praying one day, I finished the prayer and the idea just entered into my head, and it immediately felt positive, it felt good, and it really went from there. Well, the idea of the website was for people to express themselves in any way they wanted, to demonstrate against what's going on. So we gave them the opportunity to send in poems, comments, anything that would be a way of expressing to the world how they felt about what's going on at the moment. To get the ball rolling on the site, I wanted to put a picture up from my family to show the world, you know, what we're about. And I chose my son Zakaria, who's a 9-month-old boy. And the picture there is of Zach in his Crystal Palace Football Club uniform and his Muslim cap. And the idea being that, you know, he is born to two British converts. He is 100% English. You know, he has his roots in English culture. He's going to be a Crystal Palace football supporter, I hope. But at the same time, he has a faith, and the two do not contradict each other.
This is actually quite a scary and, you know, slightly tense time, and what I found quite interesting was that so many of the postcards that were submitted were actually amusing. You know, there were things like, you know, chill, don't kill, and to sort of see Muslim guys who, you know, are demonized so much now by society, being witty, and to sort of say, look, actually, we're not all scary. Some of us, you know, some of us just want to be Biryani. I thought that was actually quite a powerful and empowering kind of liberating thing in some ways. And so I found that Not in the Name of Peace being a more powerful website because it was more subverting in some ways. You know, it was actually saying, it's not just saying a passive thing, we're not afraid. It was like saying, don't be afraid of us.
Those who came here to kill last Thursday had many goals, but one was that we should turn on each other like animals trapped in a cage. And they failed. They failed totally and utterly.
Tonight, the capital is coming to terms with a failed terror attack. Exactly 2 weeks on from the bombing that left 56 people dead, police have confirmed there were 4 attempts at causing serious explosions. No one was badly injured.
Most of the big terrorist attacks, 9/11, Madrid, were one-offs. I mean, we don't know yet whether follow-ups were planned. In London, we had a follow-up almost exactly like it, planned for 2 weeks afterwards, that nearly happened. If it hadn't been for dud explosives, it would have happened. And I think that's tested us more than just the bombs going off. It has made people a little bit more nervous.
I think what we can do is we can, I guess, learn from what we've seen in Israel. Ultimately, over there, it has become a way of life. People have no choice but to deal with it. Having said that, there will be an interim period before we get from being completely shocked to accepting it as a way of life, where we're going to be extremely anxious.
The We're Not Afraid website, I think, is kind of, it seems to be locked in a moment where there is just one seminal devastating attack. If this kind of carries on, what we have to basically deal with is not in a sense of we're not afraid, but that fear is actually part of our lives, but we don't let it rule it.
Still Not Afraid has been a recurring theme coming in, and that's come from London, from abroad, it's come from everywhere as well.
Keep moving backwards, about 50 metres if you can.
If you have mobile phone images of what happened, the police would like you to get them to www.police.uk. They asked for this before, 2 weeks ago.
We have projections of 1 billion mobile phone cameras being sold per year, which means that basically everybody will be carrying their own camera with them, which means that it's impossible then for any news event that affects people for it not to be covered photographically.
I think the 7th of July was the moment where the camera phone sort of came to its own, and a sort of technology which had previously been used to sort of get glimpses of a rock band to your friend suddenly became something that was actually an empowering journalistic device. If we're going to be vigilant in this new world, these kind of devices aren't just journalistic devices, they're also devices of vigilance, they're also devices to combat and enforce security.
We've got maybe a kind of new kind of Big Brother. You can't do anything without somebody somewhere around the place being able to take a picture of it. And I hope that it means that the forces of repression can't actually get away with as much as they would like to.
I think that my generation and the generation coming up just behind us are essentially cynical, or a lot more culturally cognizant of things. It's mainly because of the web. We can get a view from anywhere in the world as to what's going on, which basically means that our worldview is broadened. So I think that with the web, really as being a globally uniting medium, people are starting to realize that in fact you can do stuff about it, and you can do it in a very big, globally enhancing way. And it's going to be exciting over the next 10 years to see what people do with the web.
I think the great thing about the web is that perhaps you don't have to be accountable for what you say. It's also a bad thing about the web, but I think we are not afraid. It gives you a place to have a voice. And it is very much like a petition. You put your stamp there. It's your metaphoric signature.
The attacks in Sharm el-Sheikh were devastating to the people there. They killed a lot of people. It also undermines their economy to a degree. You know, international tourism will be affected, and it's a devastating thing to have happened. The slogan, "We're not afraid," has penetrated the psyche in some way. Maybe it's been reported in their press. I think what was interesting for two reasons. One, that they used it, and two, that they actually wrote it in English, which I mean, was an amazing thing to look at and see. We're a disparate nation of different people, and we were united under our common identity, which is London and the UK. And what absolutely amazed me was how people had taken "We're not afraid" as being their central message, whatever it meant for them, which was incredibly moving. And I think we stood united that day.
In the last few thousand years, we found that language is a bloody useless way to resolve conflict and to reach understanding. So maybe, and this is maybe a little bit utopian and idealistic of me, maybe through use of these images, we can maybe find a kind of new understanding with each other.